with Bruno with your question. It's not necessarily a question, but obviously something that's currently worth discussing in the property space. So this regards to, well, recently the finance minister announced that there's going to be a new South Africa will have a new rooftop solar tax break, which kicked in the 1st of March, I believe. So maybe Bruno, just in summary, just let us know basically what one needs to know before installing solar. So maybe some advice for property developers, investors, and obviously individuals as well. And then just take us guide as how tax break works and who can claim and etc.
Sure, excellent. So I'll do a summary now, and then we can start breaking this down into detail, over the next couple of weeks. But long story short, so just a couple of things that almost disclaimers or housekeeping when it comes to this. First of all, it's not in legislation yet, right? One needs to remember that this was just proclaimed by the minister to a great degree. It's basically already acting as though it is part of the legislation and is in our law, but it's not yet. That's only going to happen later in the year. So that's just the first thing to remember. Why that's relevant is obviously the risk that it doesn't come into our law, but I doubt that that won't happen. But the second relevance behind that is the fact that we don't actually know what the legislation says because we haven't seen the legislation yet. People need to bear that in mind, obviously, because it's very difficult to try and structure exactly what's permissible, what isn't permissible, or at least, let's put it this way, it's very difficult to guarantee that something that you do is going to be permissible unless we know exactly what the legislation says. So that's just the first thing to bear in mind. So let's cover a couple of basics then, so that we at least know what direction we're looking at and there's very little confusion. So this is things that we've seen obviously from the budget speech and from SARS releasing certain commentary on the solar rooftop incentive. So these things we know with a certain degree of certainty because it has been spoken about. So yes, although there's some detail that might still be missing, with certainty we understand this. So now we're dealing with two situations that people need to understand. This isn't one incentive that applies across the board. It's actually two different incentives, very, very like worlds apart from each other, right? So that's the first thing people need to remember. There's one that applies to business. There's one that applies to individuals, right? They aren't connected with each other. They're two separate things. The one that applies to businesses already actually exists as it stands today, and it's existed for some time now. And it's Section 12B of the Income Tax Act. So what this specific provision at the moment allows is a tax deduction. So it's basically called a capital allowance. So if you go buy anything in the renewable energy space, so it speaks about hydropower, it speaks about wind power, it speaks about solar power, anything that you buy, including installations, foundations, everything, you can actually claim certain allowances every year for this. And these allowances are basically tantamount to a deduction. So in calculating what your taxable income is going to be, you're going to take your gross income and you're going to deduct whatever the Tax Act allows you to deduct. At this moment in time, the Tax Act has different ways of approaching it depending on the output of these installations. The proposed change is going to take away those restrictions on the output. I'm going to say absolutely any installations that you have with respect to this renewable energy will be deductible, right? In the first year. So this is now where they upped it a little bit. So at the moment, it goes up to 100%, and sometimes it's divided over a number of years. The proposed change allows you as a business to deduct 125% of the cost of these of this renewable energy, including installations. SARS has indicated at some point or another that it includes everything relating to the installation, including the actual material itself. 125%. So you get to deduct a hell of a lot more. So I think in a million, if it's out of R1,000,000, if I'm not mistaken, if it's R1,000,000, it's a deduction of 377,000, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. So if you back calculate it, the way basically that it works is because of this reduction, you're going to effectively get a discount of around 37%, if my maths is correct, on these products, because the reality is you're not paying tax on this amount anymore. So you're actually saving that tax that you would be paying. You're now saving it. But remember, guys, this isn't a free ride. This isn't something where SARS is giving you money and saying, knock yourself out. You've just saved a lot of money. If in future you ever sell these and try to get rid of it, dispose of it of any way, SARS is going to try claim recoupments back. So just bear that in mind. The second incentive is for individuals. So this is one of a kind. It's the first to market in years from SARS and the Treasury. And this is actually quite simple. SARS is willing to give individuals 15,000 Rand discount effectively from the tax that they're going to pay in any tax year. So they're basically saying, oh, you owe us 20, no worries, just pay us 5. That's remarkable. So this is a rebate, not a deduction. So it's an actual 15,000 Rand off the amount that you would owe SARS. So number one, that's great because there's no recoupment. So SARS doesn't claim it back later. This is straight saving that you're going to get. It's the 15,000 Rand is calculated as follows. So it's up to 15,000 Rand, which is going to be calculated at 25% of the costs of solar panels, not installations, nothing else except the panels itself. So here we need to be careful. Even if you're getting inverters and batteries, sorry guys, not going to be able to deduct it. You need to prove that you bought the panels, prove that you installed the panels, do the calculation. You're allowed to claim 25% of the cost of the panels, provided that it doesn't go above 15,000. It's a once in a lifetime rebate. So yeah, that's the kind of quick intro behind it from what we know. So anyone that has any questions can feel free to ask.
100%. Thank you very much. Definitely quite as much as it was an intro, as a sort of high level intro. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. It is quite, there's a lot of detail to it. So one needs to make sure before they go ahead and commit themselves to something like this, especially at a large scale. You do speak to somebody that knows a lot more about it. Otherwise, you could find yourself doing it the wrong way. And then, as we all know, nobody wants to be on the wrong side of SARS. So we will, as Bruno said, dive deeper into this as it goes along and as it perhaps does become legislation. So definitely look out for those episodes. And I think that is all we have for you today. And thank you, Bruno, and thank you, Nick, for today.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the long weekend.
Thanks.
You too.
Thanks. Cheers.